Good morning. This is Joe Forward, legal writer for the State Bar of Wisconsin. And today I'm here with Judge Randy Koschnick. Judge Koschnick is the director of the Wisconsin State Court System, and he's going to give us a little update about what's going on in the courts right now. We have talked with Judge Koschnick in the past as the pandemic occurred and as it continued, and he's going to give us an update today about what's going on. Judge Koschnick, how are you doing?
Fine, Joe. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Judge Koschnick, give us an update about we're in August now, beginning of August 2021. What's going on in the court system with the circuit courts and reopening, and what's happening right now?
All the circuit courts are open for in-person proceedings, including jury trials, and that's been true since June 1st of this year. So we're able to accommodate jury trials and other in-person proceedings. Circuit courts are also using Zoom for some proceedings. We've learned through the pandemic, out of necessity, by using Zoom and circuit court eFiling, that electronic communication is much more efficient in many ways than the old way of doing things. And so now we're trying to incorporate what we've learned going forward. And so some circuit courts are using Zoom for a number of different types of proceedings. But I think importantly, the most significant change in the past 2 or 3 months has been that all circuit courts are now open for jury trials. Those have been delayed or impeded because of the pandemic, of course, over the past 18 months or so.
Okay. And so are the courts, are they working through backlogs now, or where's the backlog at right now?
We're monitoring the backlog. So it's important to understand, Joe, that the courts remained operational throughout the entire pandemic. Some things were slowed down because we were limited in how many in-person proceedings we could have. Like indicated, jury trials were suspended for a short time in the circuit courts. And so there was a backlog of cases, but we're monitoring that. And now that cases are being set for jury trials, the backlog is really diminishing, which is to be expected. And so we're monitoring it. We don't think it's catastrophic. There is a backlog. We're working with the bar and the judges and the support personnel in the courts to address it as effectively and efficiently as possible. And I think we're going to be fine. It's going to take some work. We've got to monitor our caseload and our case flow. But I think we're gonna be fine. There's no catastrophic backlog where people are having their day in court, unreasonably delayed. If you want to have a court date, we can get you on within a reasonable time.
Okay, good. And I know previously the courts were working under safety plans. Are those still in place? What is the update there?
Well, the state Supreme Court did have a statewide order that covered all of the circuit courts. There was a mask mandate, for example, and every county was required to have a safety plan in place. Each county put together a team, including the judges, the clerks, the lawyers, county elected officials, and members of the public, as well as law enforcement, to come up with a safety plan that would work in that particular circuit court. And then those required approval of the chief judge. Several months ago, the state Supreme Court repealed the statewide mandate and allowed local courts to determine whether they want to have a special safety plan in place, and if so, what that plan would look like. So several counties, I think most of the counties, have appealed the special safety plans and the mask mandates. Some counties still have plans in place, but the Supreme Court of Wisconsin has returned control to the local circuit court judges in conjunction with other officials and parties and lawyers. Okay,
great. And I mean, we're hearing now about an upsurge with COVID in terms of the Delta variant. What would happen if there was a surge in Wisconsin, for instance? What would happen with the courts? Would we have to go back to those safety plans?
Ultimately, it would be up to the state Supreme Court as to whether they're going to issue another statewide order. They're monitoring the situation. I'm monitoring the situation day by day. I'm in regular communication with judges around the state. There's pros and cons of going each way as far as local control or a centralized state order. Local control gives a lot of benefits because counties vary quite a bit in their routines, their procedures, their parties. Milwaukee County obviously is quite a bit different than Iron County or Rusk County. And so I think local control is really important. The judges generally prefer local control because they can decide what's best for their county, and they're elected officials for the most part, so they are in a good position, I think, to make those local decisions. I found that a lot of the attorneys who practice in multiple counties were really, promoting the idea of a statewide order to give them some continuity between counties, and I can understand that. So there's pros and cons both ways. I think the preference of the Supreme Court, based upon their previous orders and decisions, is for local control by local circuit court judges whenever that's practicable and reasonable.
Great, thanks for that update, Judge. And I know also separately, appellate e-filing has been implemented, I believe. Can you give everyone an update about appellate e-filing?
Sure, I'd love to. The appellate e-filing system, first of all, it's based on the circuit court e-filing system. So for attorneys who've been practicing in circuit court using the e-filing system, which has been mandatory in circuit courts for a while now, it should seem very familiar to them when they do an appellate case in the Court of Appeals on the e-filing system. The e-filing became mandatory in the Court of Appeals July 1st of this year, so just over a month ago. The state Supreme Court is now in a pilot phase. So the Supreme Court is going to pilot some e-filing cases in the near future, I presume this term, and see how it works. So the goal is to get all courts in Wisconsin, Circuit Court, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court on the e-filing system. We need to make sure it's ready to go. So there are unique procedural requirements and practical concerns at each level of court that need to be addressed individually. CCAP, which is our state-based, state-run IT system, built the entire e-filing system, and we use the same basic structure for e-filing in the circuit courts to build the Court of Appeals e-filing system, and as we're building the Supreme Court e-filing system as well. So I should add too, during the pandemic, people talk about Zoom quite a bit, and yeah, Zoom was critical to keep us operating during the pandemic. Another thing that really helped was e-filing. We had circuit court e-filing in place long before the pandemic hit, and that was really a godsend because it allowed us to continue to operate while reducing the need for interpersonal interaction for filing papers with the court and serving other parties. And so e-filing did turn out to be even more useful than we had first imagined.
That's great. He's a Director of State Courts, Judge Randy Koschnick. Thanks so much for the update. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure. And Joe, one more thing. If people have questions, I'd encourage them to go to our website, wicourts.gov. There's an e-filing tab that lists all sorts of new information about the e-filing system, as well as other information about the court system. Additionally, questions on e-filing that can't be found on the website, you can always call the clerk of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals in Madison for questions on appellate e-filing. Sheila Reef and her staff are more than happy to help people with questions.
Great. Thanks, Judge.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Nice talking to you.
You too.